Hello and welcome to TanimaTV. Today we are discussing a critical topic that affects the continent of Africa and its people. Modern colonization, disguised as economic partnerships and foreign investment, has been a pressing issue for many African nations. However, African leaders are now pushing back against this new form of oppression. Let's dive into the details. Modern colonization is the subtle yet powerful influence of foreign powers over African countries, often disguised as economic partnerships or foreign investment. This phenomenon has led to the exploitation of Africans' natural resources, cultural erasure, and political manipulation. It's a complex web of economic, political, and social control, perpetuating the notion that Africa needs external guidance and expertise to develop. Modern colonization is a continuum of the historical scramble for Africa, where foreign powers carve up the continent for their benefit.
That interference in Africa started with slavery. When slavery had lost its value, it graduated into colonization. And that is the context in which Berlin must be seen, when the European powers sat in Berlin and divided the continent of Africa into spheres of influence. When colonization had lost its luster through a combination of certain realities and agitation from the continent, we regained our independence. But as John Henry Clark, that great African-American, said, we regained independence by mimicking European governance systems. And he rightly says, no African country will ever succeed on the basis of those systems. After that, the Neo-Colonial project was instituted. And all of us will remember Kwame Nkrumah's book, Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And he there says the most dangerous. We are now in a neo-colonial stage when the European powers are at their most diabolical, when the Americans are at their most diabolical. And it's not lost on me that they'll be meeting in Hiroshima next week as the G7. And how do they interfere? They interfere militarily. They ensure that you in the military are trained in Sandhurst, are trained in West Point, so they affect your mind. They interfere diplomatically, sometimes through gunboat diplomacy. And that is why you see sometimes your typical European ambassador treats our heads of states in a condescending manner. They interfere through institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank. They interfere by ensuring that our economic infrastructure is beholden to theirs through dollarization. They interfere through education. They interfere by influencing our processes, by lending us advisors who tell us what to do. The neo-colonial project is alive and well, and it is at its most dangerous, and we Africans must smell the coffee. If we don't, they are going to continue to interfere. How else do they interfere? Through NGOs, Danida, CEDA, UK Aid, USAID. These are Trojan horses that are introduced into our countries for the purpose of influencing our processes. And they infiltrate our institutions. Right now, if you look at the African Development Bank, look at the shareholding. It's Americans, it's Germans, it's Japanese, it's the French. And the Europeans have done their bit. They also interfere through post-colonial institutions, the Commonwealth of independent nations. They are not sovereign states, former French-speaking nations. These are the instruments that they interfere through.
From China's massive infrastructure project to France's continued influence Over its former colonies, modern colonization takes many forms. The United States also has a significant presence in Africa, with military bases and economic interests across the continent. These foreign powers often prioritize their interests over Africa's development and sovereignty. For instance, China's debt trap diplomacy has led to African countries surrendering control over strategic assets like ports and roads. France maintains a strong grip on its former colonies through economic and political ties, limiting their ability to make independent decisions. African leaders are now uniting against modern colonization, speaking out against foreign interference and exploitation. They are demanding fair partnerships, sovereignty over their resources, and an end to cultural erasure. This growing resistance is a testament to Africans' desire for self-determination and economic empowerment. African leaders are asserting their agency, challenging the dominant narratives that Africa needs external savior.
It is high time for France to lift its knee off our neck and put an end to this unjust oppression. Centuries of misery, human trafficking, colonization, and neo-colonization have caused immeasurable suffering. It's time to put an end to this cycle of oppression. It's high time for France to leave us alone. It's time for France to take a cue from its European neighbors and learn a valuable lesson in independence. Germany is the leading economic power in Europe, significantly surpassing France, which is ranked as the third or fourth largest economic power globally. Germany does not exploit any country, any colony. I can mention Italy, I can mention Spain, who had colonies before, but who do not exploit anyone, who do not interfere, who do not impose leaders in their former colonies. On what grounds does France believe it can continue to impose leaders on us and make choices on our behalf? This must come to an end. And the emerging Africa, the African youth, the African elites, and the African diaspora all stand united in saying no, it cannot continue any longer. France's hypocrisy is evident and pervasive in daily life. Let's examine the cases of Mali and Chad as prime examples of this hypocrisy. In Chad, where the constitutional process has been interrupted, France applauded and its president visited to officially consecrate the new king's coronation ceremony. In Mali, where it is not the constitutional process that has been interrupted, but the transition process, France has condemned and even packed up its things to say that it is leaving Mali. That's hypocrisy. It's the double standard. It is the double language that France employs in its dealings with Africa. During our questioning of Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian regarding the situation in Ivory Coast and France's decision to allow a third term, he provided a clear explanation. He stated that while he accepted the third term for Ouattara, he refuses it for Belarus. He emphasized that France has condemned the situation in Belarus and has actively encouraged the European Union to do the same. Le Drian explains that in Belarus, millions protested, unlike Ivory Coast, where there were no mass demonstrations on the streets. This is how France deals with African issues. Personally, we expect absolutely nothing from France. We desire her to cease meddling in our matters so that the people of Senegal can exercise their freedom of choice rather than being influenced by France's selection of a candidate using the tactics we are aware of. We begin by targeting individuals, adorning them with the Legion of Honor or a similar knightly rank, enlisting them in Masonic lodges, and informing them to prepare themselves as they will be next in line. Even the hypothesis that Macky Sall may not succeed, we know who is being prepared by France. This must come to an end. It will not occur in this manner any longer. Let's be clear, we have absolutely nothing against the French people. In France, both political and citizen voices are rising to hold and express the same discourse as the one I am currently presenting to you. For example, the deputies, such as Mrs. Frédérique Dumas, who regularly speaks on the platform of the Assembly, who regularly writes to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, since she is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, to raise this unfair behavior of France towards Africa hold the same speech as us. The same Mr. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, Jean-Paul Lecoq, André Chassaigne, all deputies, hold the same discourse as us, and hundreds of other voices. The NGO endures. Like other non-profit organizations, are doing remarkable work in the same direction. We strongly urge France to listen to the voices that speak to it about our plan for a more collaborative, fairer, and sustainable partnership between Africa and France. It is crucial that we work together towards a future that is equitable, just, and environmentally conscious. If she listens, I believe we'll have beautiful days ahead in our collaboration together. If he doesn't know how to cut it, thinking he can continue to function like in the time of our grandfathers, this African youth no longer accepts it. France must make preparations for a definitive break and completely withdraw from Africa. Africa belongs to Africans, not France. She belongs to no one else, neither China, nor the United States, nor anyone else.
African countries have successfully resisted modern colonization, maintaining their sovereignty and control over their resources. Ghana, for example, has taken steps to increase its own ownership of natural resources, while Ethiopia has invested heavily in its own infrastructure development. South Africa has implemented policies to promote economic empowerment and reduce reliance on foreign capital. These success stories serve as inspiration for other African nations, demonstrating that African-led development is possible. To combat modern colonization, African leaders must prioritize unity, economic empowerment, and cultural preservation. This includes investing in African-led initiatives, promoting regional trade, and celebrating African culture. Africa must develop its own economic and political institutions, reducing reliance on foreign aid and expertise. African leaders must work together to create a continental vision, harnessing the continent's resources and talent to drive development. Despite the progress made, challenges persist. African countries must navigate complex geopolitical dynamics, balance economic development with environmental sustainability, and address internal political and social issues. However, these challenges also present opportunities for innovation, cooperation, and growth. Africa can leverage its demographic dividend, harnessing the energy and creativity of its youth to drive development. The continent can also explore new partnerships and alliances, forging a more equitable and multipolar world order. Modern colonization is a pressing issue for Africa, but African leaders are pushing back. By uniting, empowering themselves economically, and preserving their culture, they are reclaiming their continent's future. It's a new era of African resistance and resurgence. Thank you for watching TanimaTV. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.